Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
What is your scariest or freakiest experience in your life? Go!
So one time I was in this village with my mom and brother. Hot summer day, blah blah, etc. etc. They went off to go to some stables quickly. Had to get some stuff from there. They ride there. And left me on a park bench, where I took my shoes off. It was a damn hot day. 20 minutes pass. They still haven't shown up. So I wander around the area, minus shoes. Nothing much to see other than a graveyard. Wander around that for a while. Sit in a chair, etc. They still don't show, so I go to the stables and ask where they are. The guy says they left over an hour ago. So I just start the long walk home, when my family suddenly pulled up in a car from the opposite direction. They've been frantically looking for me for the past hour, and obviously don't believe me when I say I didn't leave the village, or even less than 30 meters away from my original spot. What makes this weirder is that they didn't see my shoes. I left them there for a good 15 minutes, then came back for them and went for a walk around the graveyard. My brother supposedly shouted at the tops of his lungs for me, and there's no way I couldn't have heard that. I honestly have no idea what happened. Sorry if it seems rushed. I've related this story so many times and am always met with the same disbelieving looks. I don't expect you to believe it. It's too odd and too impossible. But it happened.
I thought it was a cool story. Where's your family been all that time?
The stables. They'd only been 5 minutes according to them. Weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. The only explanation I could possibly think of, rational, is that I fell asleep. But I can't explain why I have such vivid memories of walking around the graveyard.
I had a lot of experiences with sleep paralysis back in the day. It sounds cool, but it is seriously creepy. For a period of like 7 months I had sleep problems, and I was only sleeping 1 or 2 nights a week. I'd go to work at 6:30 every day like a zombie. Wait until everybody walked in the building and settled down. Then I'd close and lock the doors to the office I worked in and just sit at the desk and stare at the wall. After sitting there for just a few minutes, my whole body would lock up and I'd be unable to move. All I could do was make a small, ugh, noise. The creepiest part about it is that every time this happened, I would hear people right outside the door whispering my name.
In May of '03, my Army unit was providing communication support for 3rd Infantry Division during the invasion of Iraq. 3rd Infantry would push forward, destroying the opposition. We would trail behind. As soon as they cleared out an area and it was deemed safe, we would move forward and dig in for a day or two. This went on for about a week or two. Hard to keep track of time when you sleep 45 minutes to 2 hours a day. Nobody had any issues in my battalion. We were a support battalion consisting of a good mix of men and women, most of us under 25. We took it in stride and never got too freaked out during the whole ordeal. So far, we have dug in and stayed in about 4 or 6 different stops on the way. One night, we stopped before the gates of Karbala during a raging sandstorm. We put our trucks into a perimeter and dug our foxholes, like normal. The difference was, and nobody could put their finger on it, everyone had an unspoken dread and creepy feeling going on. The only way I can really describe it is that scene in The Matrix where Morpheus takes Neo into the Construct program and freezes time when the agent pulls out his gun. It felt like time stopped, but we could walk around normally. Wild dogs were howling their lungs out like I've never heard. Soldiers saw lights, movement, shadows. We fired on nothingness. Adjacent doors and windows in war-torn buildings slammed and rattled. I slept for 15 minutes that night, clutching my M249 unblinking, listening to the gunfire and explosions nearby. The next day it was time to roll out. We got in our Humvees and graciously pulled away in the convoy serial. As we passed through the gates, we saw carnage, dismembered bodies being eaten by dogs, burnt torsos, no arms or legs, shot up Iraqis on the sides of the roads, blown up cars with charred corpses inside. Apparently we had moved too far, our command got the wrong coordinates, whatever. Whatever the hell happened, the blood was still fresh on the ground. I've never been one to believe in ghosts, but that place felt haunted down to my bones. I could feel it unmistakably.
This one time, I had this dream. I think it was a dream. I've never been sure if I was awake or not. Anyway, I dreamt. I was just lying in bed, looking at the ceiling. It was really dark. Normally, my room is pretty light at night because there's a street light right outside my room. But this night, it was pitch black, except for this little funny glimmer of light, like a star, in the corner of my eye. Every time I tried to look directly at it, it would disappear. So I was just kind of playing this game where I was trying to see this light properly. At this point, I was perfectly relaxed, no creepy vibe whatsoever. When all of a sudden I literally felt, I didn't see anything, but I knew they were there. A pair of hands bursting out of the darkness, going straight for my throat. I woke up screaming my lungs out. After a while, I calmed down enough to go back to sleep. A couple of weeks later, my little sister was telling me about this dream she had had, where she was woken up by someone choking her. She couldn't breathe or move. There was someone sitting on her chest and squeezing her throat. Then, she told me she was woken up by me screaming in the next room. I hadn't told her about the dream I had had.
Okay, I've only relayed this to a few people before, but why not? Come to think of it, it's really not that scary when juxtaposed against the other things in this thread. But here goes. I was 12 and on a scout campout at a place called Matagwai Scout Reservation in California. Now there's this big ghost legend that persists at Matagwai that I'll do my best to explain. A long time ago, Matagwai was inhabited by an Indian tribe who needed a new chief. So a foot race was held among the braves to determine a new chief. One of those braves, Mikatabi, don't know quite to spell it, pronounced Mikatabi, rhymes with lobby, made a deal with the devil to become the new chief. He sacrificed his young donkey, whose name completely escapes me, to win the race and become chief. Fast forward a while, and now the ghost of Mikotabui roams the Matagwai Valley where the scout camp is located, running from his donkey, who I guess is looking for revenge. According to the legend, the world will end when the donkey catches up to Mikotabi. Also, the donkey is supposed to manifest itself as a huge, glowing donkey skull, and Mikotabi is usually present as a glowing blue ball of light, and less commonly an 8-foot-tall glowing skeleton with full Indian getup. Okay, so I'm 12 and camping out at Matagwai for a week. It's the middle of the night, and I'm bunking with a friend in one of those canvas wall tents, so it's possible to see a bit of the ground outside between where the two flaps close. I wake up having to urgently take a piss when I hear what sounds like an electric generator kind of thing. Kind of a whirring that emanates from far away, gradually getting closer. I wasn't scared, but a bit curious. There was a road on the side of the campsite, and I figured it might be one of the rangers driving down the road, until I could hear that the sound was clearly coming from a location in which there is no road. The whirring sound enters the campsite and stays in the same spot for a while, until I hear it move towards my direction. Next, I can see a blue glow cast on the ground outside, as what appears to be a blue ball of light passes outside the crack in the two tent flaps. So I guess that's it. It was all made worse by the fact that I really had to piss. I eventually willed myself to get up and stand inside the tent pissing out, and then get back into bed and stay awake scared as hell till dawn.
Not quite the scariest, but it's the most recent thing in a line of weird shit. About a month ago, I started having recurring dreams. Well, not recurring, they were different, but they always ended in the same way. I would always get shot at the end and wake up right before the bullet hit me. The odd part was that it was always the same person. He was an elderly guy, looked about 60 or 70, skinny, scruffy beard, dirty clothes, you know the kind. He would always be something different. Sometimes he was the guy at the gas station, sometimes the waiter at a restaurant or diner, sometimes the ride operator at a carnival, etc. He would start out friendly enough, but after I was done with whatever he was selling or doing, I would see him out of the corner of my eye, sneaking around some bushes or whatever, with a gun. I would try to hide or run away, but every time he would find me. Normally, I don't pay attention to dreams, but I live in a small retirement town full of old people. I started to see him everywhere I went, until I just stopped going outside for a while. Then, a few days ago, it all stopped.
One of the freakiest events that has happened to me outside of a dream would most likely be last night. It was relatively late, 3 a.m., and I was driving home from a job. The job was located in the backwoods area of where I live, down a long, twisty road lined with old trees, a few burnt-down houses, and a cemetery. The entire time I was driving down that road, I could feel that something was about to jump out at me, a clown with a bloody butcher knife to be exact. Unsurprisingly, nothing of that nature happened, and I got down the road, through town and to the mouth of my cove, with nothing more than an edgy feeling. My house is at the top of the cove, but I could notice something, though I wasn't clearly thinking due to the time. I opened my garage door and began driving up the other half of the cove when I saw a decrepit creature scratching at the glass door of my garage. It looked something like a hunched-over old lady in a nightgown. I slammed on my brakes and the garage door finished opening. Then the thing made its way towards the now open garage door, which is the only way into my house from the front. I was scared stiff, contemplating running it over, but not wanting to get that close to it. It seemed to notice me about halfway to the open garage door and just stared at me, its eyes reflecting very brightly from my headlights, revealing an extremely aged face, then began walking down the other side of my driveway to the cove. I pulled in swiftly and closed the garage door, looking through my rear-view window at it closed. It was already at the end of the cove, moving swiftly, much faster than perhaps I could run, definitely faster than an old lady. At the moment it's 2:30 a.m., and I'm scared shitless, fearing it will come back.
Should have run it over. Also definitive proof of witches.
Although I am aware this is just a dream, I thought I'd share it with you. In my dream, me and an old high school friend were hanging out in my room on a dark and windy night. I remember looking at my watch in the dream, and it was 3 a.m., so I decided to walk him to his car out the front of the house so I could go to bed. I live in a granny flat out the side of the house, so to get to the front, I walk around the side of my house, down the driveway. On the left-hand side of the driveway is my parents' house, and on the right is an 8-foot fence separating us from the house next door. As we were walking down the driveway, my friend pauses. I look at him, and he has a look of horror on his face. So I trace the direction his eyes are looking, and jump out of my shoes too. There is a guy looking straight at the wall of my house from behind the neighbor's fence, with no expression on his face at all. He is just staring at that wall at 3 a.m. in the morning and not moving. After observing this dude for about 10 seconds, he breaks his trance, looks at me, makes direct eye contact with me, and not my friend, and grins. The worst part, however, is that I woke up instantly after the grin, and for a split second I felt totally lost, a little insane. It was nuts.
2 things, only one of which is paranormal. My first house when I was 18 was insanely old. The builders are probably dead now, but it was infested with raccoons, which I did not know about until a month or so after I got the house. I was walking down the hall one morning and a raccoon just walks by in front of me. I freak, 'cause I'm not expecting a raccoon in my house. I run back to the stairs and there is another one waiting at the bottom. Even more freaked out now, I quickly run to the office, which is right in front of the stairwell. And then, in the ceiling heating grate, I hear chittering. I look up, and this raccoon face is looking back. Now I have a phobia for raccoons. The paranormal one was interesting. It's sorta like the soothsayer in Shakespeare's Caesar. I was at a bar when I was 22, and I see this drunk guy staring at me. Not like a glance, but a full-on, horrified-looking stare. I walk over to him and ask him why he's looking at me. He tells me my name, my house address, my cell phone number. My two closest friends and my girlfriend are the only people who know it. It isn't even in my name. Why I was at the bar. My grandma died a little while back. What she died from, how I will be injured next, and how I will die. I am freaked out because of how accurate he was. He said I will have a slice in my right foot taken off. That same night at my new house, having forgotten all about him, I drop a knife on my foot. It was razor sharp and sliced a small section off the side of my right foot. He said I would die by being shot. Considering I go outside mostly at night, I have become paranoid.
One morning I wake up, or so I thought, to my brother sitting across the room from me. We have some boring conversation until he says something totally random that doesn't make any sense. Can't remember what it was. So I ask him what he meant. He says nothing. I go, "What do you mean?" "Mike, Mike," and then start to become aware that I'm not really awake and haven't really been talking. The instant I have this thought, I partially wake up, but am sleep paralyzed, and as if provoked by the realization, my nightmare brother explodes into a mass of black shadow and flies across the room onto my chest, making this sound like a combination of wind, whipping through fabric and screaming. Took several minutes before I could finally kick myself back to fully awake. Another time I woke up, facing the side of my bed that's up against the wall. There's a pillow that managed to get balanced perfectly on its edge, right in front of my face, and through gummed up sleepy eyes and a trick of shadows and wrinkles on the pillow. It looks like I'm facing the other way, looking out into my room, only there's a vague, shadowy figure standing next to my bed, so I'm already kind of freaked out and not moving while I figure out WTF to do when the pillow falls over. Looked like all of reality falling away before my very eyes. So I leap out of bed towards what should have been the room, but instead just slam into the wall in front of me. Still barely awake and have no idea what's going on. Ricochet off the wall and onto my floor. Scramble out of my room and out into the front yard. It's hilarious after the fact, but pure terror at first.
When I was about 18 or 19 years old, I had a case of night paralysis. I'm 20 now, by the way. Anyways, my girlfriend was over for the week and we slept in the same bed. We both fall asleep like normal, but somewhere around 4 in the morning I half woke up, sleep paralysis, not sure what spurred it on. Anyways, I was in the fetal position facing the window. Now my window was about 3 feet from me and was closed, but the blinds were open and outside the window I could see a shadow monster figure floating outside. It was just floating there in the window looking right at me. I could hear it crunching bones in its mouth, its previous victims, I guess, but the bone-crunching sounds were really concentrated, like I could visualize the bones splinting and shattering and bone marrow being ripped out of them. It was horrifying. But it just sat outside my window. I couldn't see too well, but I could tell it was doing something and trying to get inside. I was freaking out but couldn't move an inch. I was trying so hard to move and scream and run, but I couldn't. I sat there watching this shadow figure crunching bones in its mouth, trying to get into my window for a good 20 or 30 minutes it felt like. Suddenly my girlfriend snaps me out of it. She said I was shaking like all hell and muttering demon over and over, with my eyes wide open in the fetal position staring at the window. I was freezing cold because the blankets fell off me, yet I was sweating like a dog. I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life. The best example I can give would be to cross the Dementors from Harry Potter Prisoner of Azkaban and the Voidwalkers from WoW.
Your girlfriend and the monster are both figments of your imagination. Please divulge your IP address so we can send the party van over to collect you.
Sleep paralysis is absolutely terrifying. I woke up with it as you do, and was surrounded by heads, floating, talking to me. Couldn't move, felt absolutely terrified, but knew I wasn't actually making any signs of terror. This went on for a good 5 minutes or so, till I finally snapped out of it. Wouldn't go to sleep for 2 weeks without reading the Bible beforehand.
One afternoon, about 4 years ago, I was at my best friend's Tina's house. She claimed the house was haunted, but I never noticed anything out of the ordinary. But one day, we were playing music on her stereo. The volume started decreasing. She turned it up again and said something like, "It doesn't like house." That was what we listened to. and then the volume decreased again. She screamed out, "Fucking shit, ghost," and turned the volume up at almost max. Then the whole house got dark. The power had been cut. Then we got yelled by her stepdad for making up stupid ghost stories, and that it was our fault that the power to the house was off. He was a dick, but that's another story. It was kinda cool, but it wasn't creepy in any way, just strange.
I don't remember this happening to me, but my mom has told me about it a couple of times. When I was a kid, not even 10 yet, my friend Brian and I used to play around this creek a mile or so from my house. This creek was awesome because if you walked down it, you'd eventually get to this big fence which you'd climb over, and that was the end of the creek. You could then jump over the creek and scale the other fence. Then you could get to the unreachable part of the creek. It was this small island that had a huge forest. We had built a fort back there. Basically, it was just a hole in the ground that we put a board over, and we'd get under there and read stuff and look at Playboys. There were other kids that would come with us sometimes. And one time one of those little bastards pushed my friend Brian in the water. Asshole. After Brian fell in, the little bastard ran away. Now here's the part I don't remember at all. But my mom says I told her this. She says that I was too young to lie about shit like this because I didn't know about unseen forces and shit like that, which I didn't know anything about. She said that I told her that I went to reach for Brian and slipped and started to fall when all of a sudden I felt something pull me back. She says that when I turned around, I saw nothing. According to a little single-digit-year-old me, I was saved by something that wasn't there. I have another story, too. One time my friend Ben and I were in my basement. We were about 13 at the time. We were playing around with the Ouija board. Bad fucking idea. We were just shooting the shit with something when it asked us to do something for it. At that moment, my cat, Ozzy, walked in. Immediately, he poofed up and started hissing at something in the middle of the room. There was nothing there. So we asked it what it wanted us to do. It spelled out DIE. We ran out of that room so fast. We ran up the stairs and ran outside to the deck and sat out there, breathing hard and freaking out. After about 5 minutes, we went back downstairs with a cross to hang on the wall. The cat was still in there, poofing out and staring intently at something in the room and growling. We hung the cross up and told whatever was in there to go away. It did. The cat settled down and walked out. I threw the Ouija board out after that. I should have taken a cue from my dad when he told of one of his experiences with it. He was in the attic of one of his friends' houses, and they had one of the old steel Ouija boards. They were talking with it when the lights started to flicker. Doors started to slam, and there was screaming. They picked up the board and threw it out the window. After it left the room, everything became quiet. I'm surprised he bought the Ouija board for me. He gave it to me for Christmas one year, that sadistic bastard.
What the hell? It didn't post my goddamn story. My older cousin and I were watching TV in his room and the channel started changing. Now, he has one of those old dial TVs, so I'm fairly certain it wasn't a universal remote, just to get that out of the way. Of course I was like, WTF, I was watching that, asshole. He looked at me oddly and was like, LOL, I was too. So we changed the channel back to what we were watching, and not 5 minutes later the channel started changing again, but faster. He tried to change it back again, but it just kept changing faster and faster. Then the unmistakable smell of sulfur filled the room. Not a farty smell, but pure burning sulfur. The door started to close slowly and we bolted. My mom thinks that I hate her parents, but it's just their damn haunted house I hate. Too much shit's happened to me there. Creepy shit's been following me around since I was a kid. No, wait. The thing that's always freaked me out the most was this. My parents bought me a telescope one year for my birthday, because I've always been a backyard astronomer. So one night, when I still lived in Maryland, I set the telescope up on its tripod and was scanning the sky, and I caught a star in my sights. I quickly fixed the scope into place so that my parents could see, and I stood up to go inside. I looked to my right, and there was this 6-tall, green, glowing figure stalking towards me with arms outstretched. Needless to say, I freaked out and ran in the house crying. I left the telescope on the front lawn until morning. I just remembered some other things. This didn't directly happen to me, but it happened nonetheless. One night I was staying with my grandparents in North Carolina with my brother and mom, all sleeping in the same bed, since I was like 8 and he was 6. My brother told me the next morning that he saw something outside the window when he woke up during the night. We went to where he saw it, and there were 3 little imprints in the grass. A few years later, we were watching a documentary on UFOs. I'd just gotten into the paranormal, especially UFOs, and at one point they showed a brightly lit saucer. My brother goes, "Holy shit, that's what I saw that night." To this day, I swear to God, grass won't grow in that spot.
Cute. A few years back, my family and I went to Mexico for vacation. My grandparents live there. They have a farm. It was Christmas night when this happened. Me and my 2 cousins were outside. The youngest said, "Look at that green chicken." We glanced and saw nothing, yet he was so sure he saw one we went to investigate. Walking down the river, we saw a green human-shaped thing. We ran away scared.
Green being? Interesting. I was about 9 and living in Montana. I had this very vivid, even to this day, dream about a giant green fox man. They'd call it furry today. In a top hat, monocle, and a cane was chasing me with the intent to murder me. I think I was scared out of my mind because of Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World on A&E the night before had this thing about night terrors. Anyway, a few days or so later, I am playing hide and seek in the woods with some friends. I go off and start to hide when I hear something behind me. Thinking I had found, I turned around and I swear to this day, I saw the giant green fox man peek up from a dry ditch. I freak and run home, panicking. No one believes this story. I know what I saw. If it was just a very, very active childhood imagination, then I could understand. But shit, it was real and still is to me.
Bitch slaps. For fuck's sake, there is no such thing as a goddamn green fox anthropomorph wearing a monocle and a top hat. Christ.
Back when I was a freshman in high school, I went exploring the campus for a week after classes had ended. My mom picks me up an hour late, so I kinda have plenty of time wandering around the new school. Everything seemed normal except for the old building's 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor. I went to the 3rd and 4th floor thrice. I thought it was normal at first because I heard janitors cleaning classrooms and moving chairs or something when I was up there. The thing is, all the lights are off. The light source was only from the windows. I couldn't get to the 5th floor because the double doors up the stairs to it were heavily chained and barricaded. The 3rd time I went up there, I started wondering why the janitors don't use lights while they're cleaning. Weird, right? So I got curious and peeked through one of the windows of a classroom. I saw no one inside, and yet I could hear the chairs moving. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. I peeked through another classroom, but everything was dark. No one was inside. That's when I started to get really scared. I panicked and ran across the other end of the hall to the stairs when I felt someone a few feet behind me. I just know someone was there, but I didn't look back. I just kept on running and I hear someone's footsteps and a ball bouncing behind. When I got to the 3rd floor, it stopped. When I finally got to the 2nd floor where there are lights, a security guard asked me what I was doing up there. He was angry. He told me that those floors were off limits. After that incident, I asked around the campus what the history of that place was. I found out that on the first few years that building was built, some basketball varsity guy died up there. You see, the door that was chained led to a covered basketball court on top. He was doing a layup when someone accidentally pushed him and he cracked his skull. Also, the first principal of that school died of a heart attack in his office on that exact same building. On further research, I discovered that before, that place was uninhabited and was filled with tall grasses, big tall trees, hills. You get the picture. Around those times, bodies were dumped around the area. I almost forgot. The main reason why the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors weren't used was because after the basketball jock died, a lot of students were said to have been possessed.
One time, some 7 years ago, back when I was in high school, I decided to borrow an old 1970s-looking leather jacket from my parents' closet for school. That day was one of those school spirit days or some shit, the theme that day being 70s clothes. Everything was going well that morning until I realized that the jacket had one of those inner lining pockets and that something was in it. Going by feel alone, I assumed it was a large pen, that is, until I realized it had no tip. Looking inside my jacket, I realized it was a bright blue vibrator. After class, I washed the fuck out of my hands, wrapped up the vibrator in paper, and threw it in the garbage, but goddamn, that was such a mental shock. From that day onward, I've filed that incident as an ace up my sleeve should I get involved in a serious argument against my parents. As of yet, I've never brought it up with them, but it remains my nuclear option.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.